The elevator to my parents' penthouse in downtown Chicago smelled of lemon polish and silent judgment. It was November 28th, 2019, Thanksgiving Day. I checked my reflection in the polished brass doors. My suit was a charcoal gray, bought off the rack at a department store 3 years ago. The cuffs were slightly frayed, and the shoes were scuffed leather loafers that had seen better winters. To the casual observer, I looked like a man who was barely scraping by. To my family, the Vances, I looked like a failure. I was 29 years old. My older brother Marcus was the CEO of Vance Global Logistics, the family shipping empire my grandfather had built from a single truck in 1960. My sister Serena was the brand ambassador, a title that seemingly involved spending 6 figures a year on Instagrammable vacations to Bali. And I, Julian Vance, was the data entry clerk. That's what they told their friends at the country club. Julian works with spreadsheets. He's very quiet. We worry about him. The elevator dinged. The doors slid open to reveal the foyer, dominated by a crystal chandelier that cost more than my annual rent. "There he is," Marcus boomed, walking into the hallway with a tumbler of scotch in his hand. He was wearing a bespoke suit, his tie loosened just enough to suggest he had been working hard, though I knew he hadn't stepped foot in the office since Tuesday. "The prodigal son returns. Did you take the bus, Jules?" "I drove," I said, stepping inside. "The Honda is running fine." "That death trap?" Marcus laughed, clapping me on the shoulder hard enough to sting. "God, Mom is terrified the bumper is going to fall off in the driveway. It lowers the property value just being parked downstairs." "It gets me from A to B," I said, handing my coat to the housekeeper, Mrs. Gable. She gave me a small, sympathetic smile. She was the only person in this building who knew I tipped her $100 every Christmas, usually in cash I slipped into her coat pocket so my parents wouldn't see. I walked into the living room. My mother, Linda, was arranging flowers on the mantelpiece. My father, Robert, was staring out the window at the gray expanse of Lake Michigan, his posture rigid. "Julian," my mother sighed, turning around. She scanned me from head to toe, her gaze lingering on my scuffed shoes. "You look thin. Are you eating? I sent you those grocery gift cards last month." "I'm eating fine, Mom," I said. "I've just been busy at work." "Work," my father grunted, not turning around. "If you can call it that. Staring at numbers all day for $40,000 a year. You could have been VP of Operations, Julian. The offer was on the table." "The offer was nepotism, Dad," I said quietly. "And I like numbers. They don't lie." "They don't pay for a mortgage in the Gold Coast either," Marcus interjected, flopping onto the leather sofa. "But hey, to each his own. Some of us are built for leadership, some for support." I took a seat on the edge of an armchair. I didn't want to get too comfortable. I knew this wasn't just a holiday dinner. There was a tension in the air, a static charge that pricked at the back of my neck. My father's shoulders were too tight. Marcus was drinking too fast. "So," Marcus said, swirling his ice, "big news coming down the pipe for Vance Global. We're looking at acquiring a distribution hub in Joliet. Massive expansion, going to double our capacity by 2021. "That sounds expensive," I noted. "It takes money to make money, little brother," Marcus smirked. "Leverage? That's the game. You wouldn't understand. It's high-level finance." "Actually," my father said, finally turning around. His face was gray, lined with stress that the Botox couldn't hide. "That's tangentially why we wanted to talk to you before dinner, Julian." I sat up straighter. "Here it comes." "We're doing some restructuring," my father continued, walking over to the bar. "For the acquisition, the bank, Sovereign Capital, requires us to consolidate some liquidity, show a unified family front." "Okay," I said. "We need to buy out your shares," Marcus said bluntly. I looked at him. When my grandfather died in 2012, he had left 10% of the company to each of us, Marcus, Serena, and me. The other 70% was held by my parents. "My shares are in a non-voting trust," I said. "They don't affect your decision-making." "It's not about voting," my father said. "It's about the cap table. The bank wants fewer stakeholders. They want to see the equity concentrated in the active management team, me and Marcus. And Serena? I asked. Serena is cooperating, my mother said quickly. She's signing her portion over to Marcus for a nominal fee. I looked at Serena, who had just walked in, scrolling on her phone. She didn't look like she was cooperating. She looked bored. What's the offer? I asked. Marcus pulled a folder from under the coffee table. He slid it across the glass surface. $10,000, Marcus said. I stared at the folder. I didn't open it. 10,000? My 10% stake in a company you claim is worth $50 million is worth $10,000? The company is leveraged, Julian, Marcus said, his voice taking on a bullying tone. We have debt, operating costs. The paper value is high, but the actual liquid value of your shares? It's negligible. We're doing you a favor. 10 grand is a lot of money for a guy who shops at Goodwill. You could fix your car, buy a new suit. It's a buyout, my father added sternly, for the good of the family. If we don't clean up the cap table, the loan for the Joliet hub might not go through. You don't want to be the reason the family business stagnates, do you? I looked at them. They thought I was stupid. They thought I was the data entry clerk who didn't understand EBITDA or debt-to-equity ratios. They didn't know that for the last 5 years, I hadn't just been entering data. I was a senior forensic analyst for a private actuarial firm. My job was literally to find rot in corporate balance sheets. And because I was a Vance, I had been tracking Vance Global Logistics on my own time since 2015. I knew the company wasn't worth $50 million. I knew Marcus had leveraged it to the hilt to pay for his condo and Serena's vacations. I knew they were bleeding cash. The acquisition in Joliet wasn't an expansion. It was a desperate Hail Mary to get a new loan to pay off the old loans before the balloon payments hit in January 2020. They weren't buying me out to clean up the table. They were buying me out because if the bank looked closely at the shareholders, they might ask for my financials. And if they asked for my financials, they would see that I wasn't broke. But I couldn't tell them that. Not yet. I need time to think about it, I said. There's no time, Marcus snapped. The meeting with Sovereign Capital is Monday morning. We need the signatures today. I can't sign today, I said calmly. I need to have my lawyer look at it. Marcus laughed out loud. Your lawyer? Who, the guy who handled your traffic ticket in 2014? Julian, come on, just take the check. It's 10 grand. Don't be greedy. I'm not being greedy, I said. I'm being prudent. Prudent, my mother scoffed. That's a rich word coming from a boy who rents a studio apartment in Rogers Park. Julian, please, don't cause a scene. Your brother is working so hard. Monday, I said. I'll give you my answer on Monday. We're meeting the bank at 9 a.m. on Monday, my father said coldly, at the Sovereign Capital branch on LaSalle Street. If you haven't signed by then, you are effectively sabotaging this family. I'll be there, I said. At the bank. You? Marcus sneered. Why would you be there? You're not management. You're a liability. If I'm a shareholder, I have a right to be present during a major refinancing event, I said. It's in the bylaws grandfather wrote. Section 4, paragraph 2. My father stiffened. He remembered the bylaws. He just hoped I hadn't read them. Fine, my father spat. Come, sit in the corner, keep your mouth shut, and bring the signed papers. If you embarrass us in front of Mr. Sterling, the bank manager, I will personally see to it that you are cut out of the holiday fund forever. Understood, I said. Dinner was a blur of passive-aggressive comments about my lack of ambition and glowing praise for Marcus's vision. I ate my turkey, drank my water, and said nothing. As I was leaving, Marcus cornered me by the elevator. You know, he whispered, leaning in close, smelling of expensive scotch and fear. If you ruin this for me, Jules, I'm not just cutting you off. I'll ruin you. I know people. I can make sure you lose that little data job of yours. I looked at my brother. I saw the sweat on his upper lip. I saw the tremor in his hand. He wasn't a titan of industry. He was a gambler who had run out of chips. I'll see you Monday, Marcus, I said. I rode the elevator down. I walked out into the biting Chicago wind. I got into my 2005 Honda Civic. It rattled as I started it. I drove 2 blocks, pulled over, and took out my phone. I dialed a number I had saved under Do Not Call. "Mr. Vance," a smooth voice answered on the second ring. "Mr. Abernathy?" I said. "It's Julian." "Julian, I didn't expect to hear from you on Thanksgiving. Everything all right with the portfolio?" "The portfolio is fine," I said. "I'm calling about a meeting scheduled at your branch on Monday. Vance Global Logistics." "Ah," Abernathy said, his tone shifting to professional curiosity. "Yes, the refinancing application. It's aggressive. I was going to reject it, frankly. The risk profile is terrible." "Don't reject it yet," I said. "Oh?" "I'll be there," I said. "Monday morning, 9 a.m. I'm coming as a shareholder. But, Mr. Abernathy?" "Yes, Julian?" "When I walk in, don't treat me like a shareholder." "How should I treat you?" "Treat me like your biggest depositor," I said. "Because I am." "Understood," Abernathy chuckled. "This should be entertaining. See you Monday." I hung up. I put the car in gear and drove toward my studio apartment. They thought I was broke. They thought $10,000 was a fortune. They had no idea that my data job was actually a cover for the fact that I had shorted the logistics market in 2016 and reinvested the proceeds into high-yield municipal bonds. They had no idea that my net worth wasn't $10,000. It was $12 million. And on Monday, the bank was going to introduce me to them properly. The weekend following Thanksgiving was a study in contrasts. While my family likely spent it frantically calling minor investors and shifting liquidity between accounts to make their balance sheets look passable for Monday, I spent it in silence. My apartment in Rogers Park was small, a studio with a view of a brick wall, but it was fortified. Inside, I didn't have data entry equipment. I had a proprietary server rack and 3 high-resolution monitors. For 48 hours, I dissected Vance Global Logistics. I wasn't looking at the glossy brochures Marcus handed out at trade shows. I was looking at the raw data, shipping manifests, fuel surcharges, and the payroll tax filings that were public record if you knew where to look. What I found was worse than I expected. The Joliet acquisition wasn't an expansion. It was a shell game. Marcus had taken out a high-interest bridge loan from a private equity firm in New York 6 months ago, May 2019, to cover a massive loss on a speculative fuel futures bet. That loan was coming due on December 15th. If they didn't secure the refinancing from Sovereign Capital by Monday, the private equity firm would exercise a warrant to seize 51% of the family company. They weren't buying me out for $10,000 because they wanted to clean up the cap table. They were buying me out because the new bank loan required a personal guarantee from all shareholders. If I signed the guarantee, I'd be liable for their debt. If I refused, the deal died. Their solution was to remove me entirely so they could sign the death warrant themselves. Monday morning, December 2nd, 2019, was bitterly cold. The wind whipped off Lake Michigan, cutting through the thin wool of my coat as I parked my 2005 Civic in the parking garage on LaSalle Street. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. I looked tired, worn down, perfect. I walked into the lobby of the Sovereign Capital building at 8:50 a.m. It was a cathedral of finance, marble floors, soaring ceilings, and the hushed murmur of money being moved. My family was already there. They stood near the elevators, a phalanx of nervous energy. My father, Robert, wore a camel hair coat that cost more than my car. Marcus was pacing, checking his watch, snapping at Serena, who looked bored and was typing on her phone. "You're late!" Marcus hissed as I approached. "It's 10 minutes to 9, I said. "We're early." "Don't start with the semantics," my father snapped. "Do you have the papers?" "I have them," I said, patting my briefcase. It was a battered leather bag I'd found at a thrift store. Inside, however, the papers were neatly organized in a folder labeled Due Diligence. "Good," Marcus said, straightening his tie. "Now remember the plan. You sit in the back. You don't speak unless Mr. Abernathy asks you a direct question, and even then, keep it short. We do the talking. We're the closers." "Understood," I said. We rode the elevator to the 40th floor. The doors opened to the reception of the Private Wealth Division. A receptionist with immaculate hair sat behind a glass desk. "Name?" she asked, not looking up. "Robert Vance," my father boomed, using his CEO voice. "And family. We have a 9 a.m. with Mr. Abernathy regarding the Vance Global facility." "One moment," she said, typing into her terminal. She frowned slightly. "I have you down for the fiercely booked conference room B. If you'll take a seat, his associate will be with you." "Associate?" Marcus bristled. "We're meeting with the senior vice president, Mr. Abernathy himself." "Mr. Abernathy is in a high-priority meeting," she said dismissively. "He'll join you when he can." My father's face reddened. To be relegated to an associate was a slight he hadn't anticipated. It signaled that to the bank, Vance Global wasn't a whale. It was a minnow begging for food. "Fine," Robert huffed. He marched toward the seating area. I hung back for a split second. The receptionist looked up again, her eyes landing on me. She took in the scuffed shoes, the fraying coat. Then she looked at my face. She paused. Her eyes darted back to her screen. Her demeanor shifted instantly from dismissal to alert professionalism. "Mr. Vance?" she asked, her voice dropping an octave. "Julian," I said softly. "Oh," she breathed. I didn't realize you were with this party. Mr. Abernathy left a note. He said if you arrived, he was to be notified immediately." "That won't be necessary," I said, holding up a hand. "I'd prefer to sit with my family for now. Just let the process play out." She looked confused, but she nodded slowly. "Of course, sir. Whatever you prefer. Can I get you anything? Sparkling water? Espresso?" "Just water," I said. "Tap is fine." I walked over to the leather chairs where my family was fuming. "What was that about?" Marcus asked suspiciously. "Why was she whispering to you?" "She asked if I was with the delivery service," I lied. "Because of the bag." "God," Serena groaned, rolling her eyes. "You are embarrassing us before we even get into the room." A young associate, looking no older than 25, came out to collect us. He led us to conference room B. It was a nice room, but it wasn't the corner office. It had a view of an alleyway. We sat. My father took the head of the table. Marcus sat to his right, opening a laptop to display a PowerPoint presentation titled Vance Global, Synergy and Expansion 2020. Serena sat next to him. I sat in the corner in a chair against the wall, away from the main table. "Perfect," Marcus muttered. "Stay there. Invisible." At 9:05 a.m. the door opened, but it wasn't Mr. Abernathy. It was 2 junior loan officers carrying thick binders. They looked tired. "Good morning," the lead officer said. "I'm Davis. This is Klein. We've been reviewing the application for the refinancing of the logistics fleet and the Joliet property." "Where is Abernathy?" my father demanded. "I was told we were dealing with the decision maker." "Mr. Abernathy signs off on the final terms," Davis said, unperturbed. "But we handle the risk assessment, and frankly, Mr. Vance, there are some questions." "Questions?" Marcus laughed, a nervous, barking sound. "The business is solid. We've been a staple of Chicago logistics for 50 years. "The history is solid," Davis agreed, opening a binder. "But the current liquidity is strained. We see a significant outflow of cash to consulting fees paid to a holding company in the Caymans. And the debt-to-income ratio on the current fleet is pushing 80%. My father stiffened. "Creative accounting," he said smoothly. "Standard tax mitigation strategies." "Perhaps," Davis said. "But the bank is concerned about the collateral. If we approve this $5 million facility, we need to know the equity is real. That's why we need the personal guarantees from all shareholders." "We have them," Marcus said, reaching for his briefcase. "My father, myself, Serena, and we are buying out the minority shareholder today." He pointed a thumb at me without looking. "He's signing the exit papers as we speak." Davis looked at me. He looked at my scuffed shoes. He looked back at Marcus. "You're buying him out?" Davis asked. "For how much?" "10,000, Marcus said. "Fair market value for non-voting stock in a leveraged entity." Davis frowned. He exchanged a look with Klein. It was a look that said, "These people are sharks eating their own." Well, Davis said, that simplifies the paperwork, I suppose. If the minority shareholder is removed, we only need your 3 signatures. However, he paused. However what? My father asked. The interest rate, Davis said. Given the risk profile, we can't offer the 4% prime rate you asked for. We're looking at 9% and a lien on your personal residences. 9%? My father shouted, slamming his hand on the table. That's usury! We've been banking with Sovereign for 20 years. This is an insult. It's the market assessment, Mr. Vance, Davis said calmly. Take it or leave it. My father stood up. His face was purple. Get Abernathy in here. Now. I'm not talking to bean counters. I want the man who knows my name. The door opened. You called? Mr. Charles Abernathy stood in the doorway. He was a man of 60, wearing a suit that whispered power in a way my family's clothes only screamed it. He had silver hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes, until he looked past my father. Abernathy, my father exclaimed, stepping forward with his hand extended. Charles, thank God. Your boys here are trying to fleece us. 9%. Tell them who we are. Abernathy didn't shake my father's hand. He walked right past him. He walked past Marcus, who had stood up to bow slightly. He walked past Serena. He walked straight to the corner of the room where I was sitting in the invisible chair. Mr. Vance, Abernathy said warmly, extending his hand to me. I apologize for the wait. I was reviewing the bond yield reports you sent over on Friday. Excellent analysis, as always. I stood up and shook his hand. Good morning, Charles. No apology necessary. I was just enjoying the theater. The silence in the room was absolute. My father's hand was still extended in the air, gripping nothing. Marcus's mouth was open. Mr. Vance? Marcus stammered. Mr. Abernathy, that's Julian, my brother, the data entry clerk. Abernathy turned slowly to face Marcus. The warmth vanished from his face, replaced by the icy stare of a man who managed billions. Data entry? Abernathy repeated. He looked at me, a twinkle in his eye. Is that what you call it, Julian? I suppose managing a $12 million personal portfolio is technically entering data. My mother gasped. It was a sharp, sucking sound, like the air leaving a tire. 12 million? My father whispered. Julian, Abernathy continued, ignoring them. I see you're sitting in the back. Are you not leading this delegation? No, Charles, I said, my voice calm. I'm the minority shareholder. I've been told to sit in the corner and speak only when spoken to. I see, Abernathy said. He looked at the table. He looked at the buyout agreement Marcus had laid out, offering me $10,000. Abernathy picked up the paper. He read the figure. He laughed. It was a dry, dismissive sound. $10,000, Abernathy said. Julian, you spent more than that on the municipal bond purchase last Tuesday. I know, I said. My father found his voice. Charles, what is going on? Julian is... He's broke. He drives a 2005 Honda. He rents a studio. He drives a Honda, Abernathy corrected, because he understands depreciation. And he rents a studio because he reinvests 90% of his income. It's called stealth wealth, Robert, something your balance sheet could use a little more of. Marcus slammed his laptop shut. This is a joke! You're pranking us! Julian? Rich? He asks Mom for grocery money. I asked Mom for grocery gift cards, I corrected, because I donate them to the food pantry in Rogers Park. I didn't want to embarrass you by refusing your charity. Marcus looked like he was going to be sick. So, I said, stepping away from the wall, since we've established that I'm not signing this buyout agreement, I think we should look at the real numbers. I walked to the table. I didn't sit in the corner anymore. I pulled out the chair at the opposite end of the table from my father and sat down. Mr. Davis, I said to the junior officer, the 9% rate, is that based on the current debt-to-equity ratio, including the offshore consulting fees? Davis blinked, stunned. Yes, sir. And if the company were to undergo a forensic audit, I asked, would that rate go up, or would the loan be denied entirely due to fraud? My father went pale. Julian, he warned, his voice low and dangerous. "Watch what you say." "I am watching," I said. "I've been watching for 5 years, and now I'm done watching." I looked at Abernathy. "Charles, I'd like to make a counterproposal regarding the refinancing of Vance Global." "I'm listening, Mr. Vance," Abernathy said, taking a seat next to me. "No!" Marcus shouted. "He has no authority! He has non-voting shares!" "Actually," I said, opening my battered leather briefcase and pulling out a blue document, "he has leverage because, unlike you, Marcus, I have the liquidity to cover the loan. Or to call it in." I placed the document on the table. "Shall we begin?" The conference room air conditioner hummed, a low, mechanical drone that seemed to amplify the silence. My father, Robert, stared at me as if I had suddenly spoken in tongues. Marcus, usually so quick with a retort or a blustering laugh, was frozen, his mouth slightly open, a line of sweat trickling down his temple. "This is ridiculous," Marcus finally managed, though his voice lacked its usual booming confidence. He turned to Mr. Abernathy. "Charles, my brother is having an episode. He works in a cubicle. He drives a rusted Honda. He doesn't have $12 million. He's lying to sabotage the deal because he's jealous." Mr. Abernathy didn't look at Marcus. He looked at me, his fingers steepled on the mahogany table. "Mr. Vance," Abernathy said to me, "your brother raises a point of verification. For the record, would you like to disclose the source of your liquidity?" "I'd be happy to," I said. I opened the battered leather briefcase again. I pulled out a single sheet of paper, a statement from a brokerage account redacted of sensitive numbers but clearly showing the total asset value. I slid it across the table to the junior officer, Davis. Davis picked it up. His eyes widened behind his wire-rimmed glasses. He looked at the date. He looked at the seal. He looked at Marcus. "It's legitimate," Davis whispered. "Verified as of this morning. $12.4 million in liquid securities, municipal bonds, tech shorts, and a significant position in Vance Global corporate debt?" Davis looked up at me confused. "You own our debt?" my father whispered. "I bought the secondary bonds when they were downgraded to junk status in 2018, I said calmly. "They were trading at 60 cents on the dollar. I thought it was a good value play, assuming competent management could turn it around. Unfortunately, I was wrong about the management." "You bet against us?" Marcus shouted, slamming his fist on the table. "You traitor!" "I bet on you," I corrected. "I bought the debt hoping you'd pay it back, but according to my analysis," I tapped the blue folder I had placed on the table earlier. "You can't." I opened the blue folder. Inside was not a loan application, but a forensic audit. It was 50 pages of charts, graphs, and highlighted transactions. I had spent 6 months compiling it, cross-referencing public tax filings with the sloppy internal memos Marcus emailed from his unsecured server. "Let's look at the synergy and expansion you presented," I said, flipping to page 5. "Stop," my father said, standing up. "We are leaving. We will take our business to Chase." "Sit down, Robert," Abernathy said. His voice wasn't loud, but it was absolute. It was the voice of the institution. "If there is fraud involved in a loan application to a federally insured bank, I am legally obligated to file a suspicious activity report. If you leave now, that report goes to the FBI before you reach the elevator. If you sit, perhaps we can find a civil resolution." My father sat. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him. I continued. Page 5. The Fleet Modernization Program. "You claimed you spent $400,000 upgrading the logistics trucks in Q3 of 2018. "We did," Marcus said sullenly. "New engines, tires." "No," I said. "You spent $400,000 leasing 3 Mercedes G-Wagons and a condo in Aspen for executive retreats. You expensed them under light transport vehicles and employee training facilities." I slid a photo across the table. It was from Serena's Instagram. She was posing on the hood of a black G-Wagon, holding a bottle of champagne, tagged #VanceLife #company car. Serena gasped and snatched her phone from the table, as if hiding it now would delete the internet. "That is tax fraud," Davis noted, writing furiously in his notebook. And material misrepresentation of assets. Page 10, I went on, turning the page with a crisp snap. The Joliet acquisition. You told the bank you needed $5 million to buy a competitor's warehouse. But the warehouse in question, I pointed to a satellite photo, has been condemned since 2017. It's a teardown. It's the land value, Marcus argued. It's strategic. It's a shell company, I said. The warehouse is owned by Vance Holdings Cayman, a shell entity Marcus registered in 2016. You're asking the bank for $5 million to buy a worthless building from yourself so you can move the cash offshore and pay back the private equity shark in New York who is threatening to break your legs. The room went dead silent. How? Marcus whispered. How do you know about New York? I track the debt markets, Marcus, I said. When a logistics company with declining revenue suddenly takes a bridge loan at 18% interest, people notice. That loan matures on December 15th. That's 13 days from now. I looked at my father. He was staring at Marcus with horror. 18%? Robert whispered. Marcus, you told me it was a standard line of credit. You told me it was 6%. I had to, Marcus cried, his facade crumbling. We missed the quarterly targets. The fuel prices spiked. I needed cash to keep the payroll going. I thought the Joliet deal would cover it. So you lied to me, Robert said. You lied to your mother. I was fixing it, Marcus screamed. I'm the CEO. I take the risks. You're not a CEO, I said quietly. You're a gambler using the family legacy as chips. I closed the blue folder. Here is the reality, I said, addressing the room. The company is insolvent. The private equity firm in New York, BlackRock Bridge Capital, holds a warrant. If they aren't paid $3 million by December 15th, they have the right to seize 51% of the equity. They will liquidate the fleet, fire the staff, and sell the brand for parts. Oh my God, my mother breathed, clutching her pearls. We'll lose everything. The penthouse? The penthouse is cross-collateralized, I confirmed. It goes too. Abernathy cleared his throat. Well, this has been illuminating. Obviously, sovereign capital cannot extend credit to Vance Global under these circumstances. The risk is unquantifiable. Gentlemen, I'm afraid we're done here. Wait, my father pleaded, reaching across the table. Charles, please, there must be a way. A restructuring? A probationary period? I've banked here for 30 years. And you just attempted to defraud us, Abernathy said coldly. You're lucky I'm not calling the district attorney right now. The only reason I'm not is out of respect for Julian. All eyes turned to me. I sat back in my chair. I looked at my family. They were broken. The arrogance was gone, replaced by the raw, naked terror of people who have never known a day of want in their lives and are suddenly staring into the abyss. There is one option, I said. What? Marcus snapped, though it sounded like a plea. What option? You said we're insolvent. You are, I said. But Vance Global doesn't have to be. I turned to Abernathy. Charles, what is the bank's position on a recapitalization loan if the borrower puts up 100% cash collateral? If the collateral is liquid and held in our vaults? Abernathy shrugged. Then the risk is zero. We'd write the loan at prime -1. Good, I said. I looked at my father. I will capitalize the loan. I will put up the $5 million needed to pay off the New York Shark and stabilize operations for Q1 2020. You would do that? My mother asked, tears welling in her eyes. Oh, Julian, I knew it. I knew you were a good boy. We're saved. I'm not finished, I said sharply. She froze. I'm not giving you money, I said. I'm investing, and like any investor, I have terms. I pulled a second document from my briefcase. It was a single page, a term sheet. Term 1, I read. Marcus resigns as CEO effective immediately. He is removed from the board. He surrenders his company car, his corporate credit card, and his salary. What? Marcus shouted. You can't fire me. It's my company. It's the bank's company, I said. And if I don't sign this, the bank takes it, or New York takes it. Either way, you're out. This way, at least the family keeps the name." Marcus looked at Robert. "Dad, tell him!" Robert looked at the floor. He didn't speak. "Term 2, I continued. "Serena's position as brand ambassador is eliminated. The marketing budget is cut to zero until revenue stabilizes." Serena opened her mouth to protest, saw the look on my face, and closed it. "Term 3, I said. "Dad, you transition to chairman emeritus. It's a ceremonial role. You keep the office, but you have no voting power and no check-signing authority." "Then who runs the company?" Robert asked, his voice shaking. "I do," I said. "I will take a leave of absence from my consultancy. I will step in as interim CEO for 12 months to restructure the debt, sell the non-performing assets, including the Aspen condo and the G-Wagons, and implement a real logistics software system." "You?" Marcus sneered, trying one last time to find his teeth. "You're a data entry clerk. You don't know how to lead men. You don't know the industry." "I know that you spent $50,000 on a team-building retreat in Cabo while your drivers were driving on bald tires," I said. "I know that leadership isn't about expensive suits and yelling. It's about competence. And right now, Marcus, I'm the only competent person in this room." I slid the term sheet across the table to my father. "You have 5 minutes," I said. "If you sign, I transfer the collateral to Sovereign immediately. We pay off New York tomorrow. The company survives. If you don't sign, I walk out that door. Mr. Abernathy files his SAR report, and by Christmas the locks are changed on the penthouse." The room was silent again. The only sound was the scratching of Davis's pen as he took notes, seemingly enjoying the drama. My father looked at the paper. He looked at Marcus, who was slumped in his chair, defeated. He looked at Serena, who was terrified. Then he looked at me. "We offered you $10,000, he whispered, a strange, hysterical laugh bubbling in his throat. "We thought we were being generous." "I know," I said. "Irony is a depreciate asset, Dad. Don't dwell on it." Robert Vance picked up the pen. His hand shook, but he signed. He slid the paper to Marcus. "Dad," Marcus pleaded, "you can't." "Sign it," Robert said. His voice was dead. "He won, Marcus. He beat us at our own game. Sign it." Marcus signed. He didn't look at me. He threw the pen down and buried his face in his hands. I took the paper. I checked the signatures. I handed it to Abernathy. "The collateral transfer is authorized, Charles," I said. "Draw up the loan documents for the new entity. Vance Logistics Recovery, LLC." "A pleasure doing business with you, Mr. Vance," Abernathy said, shaking my hand. "I'll have the notary come in." I stood up. I buttoned my cheap coat. "Where are you going?" my mother asked. "Julian, aren't you coming to lunch? We should celebrate. We're a family." I looked at them. They wanted to pretend it hadn't happened. They wanted to smooth it over, integrate my new wealth into their delusion, and go back to the way things were, just with me paying the bills. "I have to go to work," I said. "I have a Honda to drive." "But you're the CEO now," Serena said. "You can take the limo." "We're selling the limo," I said. "It's on the list." I walked to the door. I paused and looked back at Marcus. "Oh, and Marcus?" He looked up, eyes red. "The $10,000 you offered me?" I said. "You should keep it. Severance packages are going to be tight this year." I walked out of the conference room. The receptionist smiled at me as I passed. "Have a nice day, Mr. Vance," she said. "You too," I said. I walked to the elevator. I pressed the button for the lobby. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel happy. I felt heavy. I had just bought my family, and I knew exactly how much they cost. Tuesday, December 3rd, 2019, began with a heavy, wet snow falling over Chicago. It was the kind of weather that turned the city into a gray slush, grinding traffic to a halt. For Vance Global Logistics, however, the grind had stopped long before the snow started. I pulled my 2005 Honda Civic into the executive parking garage at 7:30 a.m. The guard, a man named Mike who had worked there for 20 years, stepped out of his booth, frowning. He waved his hand, signaling me to turn around. "Delivery entrance is around back, buddy," Mike shouted over the wind. "This is executive lot only." I rolled down the window. "It's me, Mike, Julian." Mike squinted, snow dusting the brim of his cap. "Julian? Mr. Vance's, the younger one?" "That's right," I said. "I need you to lift the gate." "Look, kid, I can't," Mike said, shifting uncomfortably. "Your brother, Mr. Marcus, he gave strict orders last week. No unauthorized vehicles, especially not, well, beaters. He said it ruins the corporate image." "Marcus isn't the CEO anymore, Mike," I said, handing him my ID badge. It was my old one, the one that said Data Entry Level 1, but I had taped a new card over it. A printout of the bank's authorization letter. "I am." Mike took the card. He read the bank letterhead. He looked at the Honda. He looked at me. A slow grin spread across his face, revealing a gold tooth. "Well, I'll be damned," Mike chuckled. "About time someone who knows how to change a tire took the wheel." The gate rose. I drove past the empty spaces usually reserved for the G-Wagons and parked in the spot marked CEO. The Honda looked ridiculous there, a rust bucket sitting on pristine concrete, but to me, it looked like the only honest thing in the building. I took the elevator up to the top floor. The offices of Vance Global were designed to impress. Glass walls, Italian marble floors, and oversized abstract art that Marcus had bought for 10 times its value. It was a cathedral to a religion that had no believers. When the elevator doors opened, the office was eerily quiet. It was 7:45 a.m. Usually, the logistics team, the dispatchers and route planners, would be buzzing. Instead, they were huddled in small groups, whispering. They looked terrified. They knew the payroll had bounced on Friday. They were waiting for the doors to lock. I walked past them. I didn't stop to explain yet. I walked straight to the double doors at the end of the hall. Office of the Chief Executive Officer. The door was unlocked. I pushed it open. Marcus was there. He wasn't working. He was stuffing things into a cardboard box. A silver humidor, a crystal decanter, a framed photo of himself shaking hands with the mayor. He looked disheveled, still wearing the suit from the bank meeting, his tie undone. "You're early," Marcus muttered, not looking up. "I thought you'd sleep in. Enjoy your victory lap." "It's a workday, Marcus," I said, closing the door. "Put the humidor back." "It's mine," he snapped, clutching the box. "I bought it in Havana." "You bought it with the corporate Amex," I corrected. "Which means it's a company asset. And since the company is currently insolvent, that humidor belongs to the creditors." Marcus froze. He looked at the box, then at me. His eyes were red-rimmed and full of hate. "You're enjoying this," he hissed, "kicking me while I'm down. You think you're so smart with your little bond portfolio, but you don't know how to run this place, Julian. The drivers are animals. The vendors are sharks. You'll be begging me to come back in a week." "I doubt that," I said. "Put it back." He slammed the humidor onto the desk, cracking the wood. "Fine, keep it. Keep the damn chair, too. I hope you choke on the dust." He grabbed his cardboard box, now containing only his personal photos, and stormed past me. At the door, he stopped. "Serena is going to kill you, by the way," he sneered. "Her card got declined at O'Hare this morning. She was trying to go to Miami to process the trauma." "I know," I said. "I canceled it at 9:01 a.m. Marcus left. I watched him walk down the hall, the employees staring at their shoes as he passed. The king was dead. I walked to the desk. It was a massive slab of imported ebony. I sat in the leather chair. It was uncomfortable, too soft, no lumbar support. I picked up the phone. "Mrs. Higgins?" I said. There was a gasp on the other end. Mrs. Higgins was the executive assistant. She had been with the company since my grandfather's day. Marcus had marginalized her, treating her like a relic, but she knew where every skeleton was buried. Mr. Julian?" she stammered. "Is that you?" "It's me, Mrs. Higgins. Could you please call an all-hands meeting? Warehouse floor. 20 minutes. Everyone. Drivers, dispatch, sales. Everyone." "Yes, sir." right away, and welcome back. 20 minutes later, I stood on a pallet in the center of the main warehouse. The space smelled of diesel and cardboard. 300 faces looked up at me. Truckers in heavy coats, dispatchers with headsets around their necks, warehouse pickers in high-vis vests. They looked angry. They looked scared. "My name is Julian Vance," I said. My voice echoed in the cavernous space. I didn't use a microphone. "Most of you know me as the guy who used to fix the printer in the back office. As of yesterday, I am the interim CEO. A murmur went through the crowd. Someone shouted, "Where's our money?" "That is why I'm here," I said, holding up a hand. "I know payroll bounced on Friday. I know the fuel cards were declining over the weekend. I know you've been told everything is fine while the ship was sinking." I looked at them. No corporate speak. No synergy. "The company was insolvent," I said plainly. "My brother, Marcus, ran it into the ground. He spent your bonuses on a condo in Aspen and leased luxury cars while you drove on bald tires." The anger in the room spiked, a palpable heat. Good. "But," I continued, "as of this morning, I have personally recapitalized the accounts. I wired $5 million into the operating fund at 8 a.m. Silence. "Checks will be reissued by noon today," I said, "with a 5% inconvenience bonus for the delay. The fuel cards are reactivated. The health insurance premiums are paid through 2020. A collective breath was released. Shoulders dropped. "However," I said, "things are going to change. The free lunches in the executive suite are over. The consultants are fired. We are going back to basics. We haul freight, we pay our bills, we go home. If you want to work, stay. If you want to play politics, leave now." No one moved. "Good," I said. "Get back to work." I walked off the pallet. A burly driver named Tony, a guy who had once threatened to punch Marcus, stepped in my path. He looked at me, then extended a hand the size of a catcher's mitt.
"Thanks for the straight talk, boss,"
Tony said.
"Does this mean we get new tires?"
"First order of business," I promised. I spent the rest of the day in the ebony office, turning it into a command center. I had Mrs. Higgins bring me the physical files, the ones Marcus hadn't digitized. At 2 p.m., the door flew open. It wasn't Marcus. It was Serena. She was wearing oversized sunglasses and a fur coat that looked like it had cost more than my Honda. She was crying, her mascara running in black streaks down her face. "You monster!" she screamed, throwing a black Amex card onto the desk. It clattered against the wood. "You humiliated me! I was at the Delta Lounge. The card was declined in front of people." "Hello, Serena," I said, not looking up from a stack of fuel receipts. "I assume you got my email about the restructuring." "Restructuring?" she shrieked. "You cut me off. I'm the brand ambassador. I have a trip to Art Basel next week. It's vital for networking." "We don't sell art, Serena," I said. "We sell logistics, pallets of frozen meat and auto parts. Art Basel is not a value add." "I built this brand," she argued, stomping her foot. "My followers—" "Your followers are bots," I said calmly. "I audited your social media account. 70% of your engagement is from click farms in Bangladesh. You spent $4,000 a month of company money buying likes." She went pale. That's marketing strategy." "It's fraud," I said. "And it's over. Your salary is zero. Your travel budget is zero. The G-Wagon is being picked up by the repo team at 4 p.m. today. If you want to keep it, you can buy it out of the lease with your own money." "I don't have any money," she wailed. "Marcus said the trust would cover it." "The trust is empty, Serena," I said. "Marcus drained it to pay the interest on the bridge loans you helped him spend. You're broke. We all are, except for me." She stared at me, her mouth working silently. The reality was finally hitting her. The bubble had burst. "What am I supposed to do?" she whispered. "I've never had a job. I'm 26. I looked at my sister. Under the layers of entitlement and expensive makeup, she was just a scared kid who had been told her whole life that the world owed her a living. "Mrs. Higgins needs help in filing," I said. "It pays $15 an hour. You can start tomorrow at 8 a.m. "Filing?" she gasped. Like a secretary? Like an employee, I said. Take it or leave it. She looked at the door. She looked at me. She burst into fresh tears and ran out. I sighed and rubbed my temples. 1 down, 2 to go. I turned back to the files. I was looking for the consulting fees Davis had mentioned at the bank, the money flowing to the Cayman Islands. I found the ledger around 6 p.m. It was hidden inside a folder marked Vehicle Maintenance Logs. I opened it. It was a list of wire transfers. $50,000 here, $20,000 there, all sent to an entity called Vance Holdings Cayman. But as I traced the routing numbers, my stomach dropped. The money wasn't going to the Caymans. It was being routed through a shell bank in the Caribbean, yes, but the final destination wasn't an offshore account. It was a domestic account in Chicago. I typed the account number into my proprietary search software, the tool I used for my forensic work. It took 10 minutes to decrypt the ownership data. The account didn't belong to Marcus. It belonged to Robert Vance, my father. I stared at the screen. Marcus hadn't just been incompetent. He had been funneling company money into a secret account for our father. While the drivers were driving on unsafe tires, while the company was drowning in debt, my father, the chairman, the man who claimed to know nothing about the day-to-day operations, had been siphoning off millions. The bridge loan from New York? The one with 18% interest? It wasn't just to cover losses. A chunk of it had gone straight into my father's pocket. My phone rang. It was my mother. "Julian," she said, her voice trembling. "Your father, he's having chest pains. We're at the hospital. He collapsed after Marcus called him." I looked at the screen. I looked at the evidence of embezzlement that would send my father to federal prison for 20 years. "I'll be there," I said. I closed the laptop. The purge wasn't over. It was just beginning. The air in the cardiac wing of Northwestern Memorial Hospital was pressurized and silent, smelling of antiseptic and floor wax. It was the evening of December 3rd, 2019. Outside, Chicago was buried under 6 inches of slush, but inside, the temperature was a constant sterile 70 degrees. I walked down the hallway toward room 412. My mother, Linda, was sitting in the waiting area, twisting a tissue into a paper rope. Marcus sat next to her, his head in his hands. He looked like a man who had aged 10 years in 10 hours. His suit was rumpled, his tie missing. When Marcus saw me, he stood up. For a second, I thought he might swing at me. His eyes were wild, bloodshot rims around dilated pupils. "You!" Marcus hissed, pointing a shaking finger. "You did this. You stressed him out. You came in with your audit and your threats, and you put him in that bed." "Sit down, Marcus," I said. My voice was low, barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of the evidence I had in my briefcase. "Don't tell me what to do," Marcus shouted, though it lacked heat. "He's 70 years old. He has a condition." "He has a condition called greed," I said, "and it's terminal." My mother looked up, her eyes wide and wet. "Julian, how can you say that? Your father is fighting for his life." "Is he?" I asked. "Or is he fighting for his narrative?" A nurse stepped out of room 412. She looked stern. "Keep it down, please. Mr. Vance is awake and stable. He's asking for Julian." Marcus flinched. "Me? He means me. I'm the CEO." "He said Julian," the nurse corrected gently. "The one in the gray coat." I adjusted my cheap coat and walked past them. Marcus slumped back into the chair, defeated by even this small preference. I entered the room. My father, Robert Vance, lay propped up against a mountain of pillows. He was hooked up to a monitor that beeped in a steady, rhythmic cadence. He looked pale, his skin the color of old parchment, but his eyes were alert. They darted to the briefcase in my hand, then to my face. "Close the door!" he rasped. I closed it. I didn't sit in the bedside chair. I stood at the foot of the bed, gripping the brass railing. "They say it was a mild angina," Robert said, his voice regaining some of its usual steel. "Stress-induced, nothing permanent." "That's good," I said, "because prison has terrible health care." The monitor beeped a little faster. Beep, 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 beep. What are you talking about? Robert asked, feigning confusion. I'm a sick man, Julian. I built a company from nothing. I gave you everything, and you come here to threaten me? I came here to finish the audit, I said. I placed my briefcase on the tray table meant for his dinner. I opened it and pulled out the file I had uncovered hours ago. I looked at the Cayman transfers, Dad, I said. The consulting fees that Marcus was paying out. The ones that drained the operating capital and forced him to take that predatory loan from New York. Marcus is incompetent, Robert said quickly, dismissively. He made bad deals. He hired expensive consultants. I tried to warn him. Stop, I said. I pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was a flow chart I had printed at the office. I traced the routing numbers, I said. The consultants didn't exist. The money went to a shell company in the Caribbean, Vance Holdings Limited. And from there, it didn't stay offshore. It was wired back to the U.S. to a private account at Northern Trust. I looked him in the eye. Your account, Dad. The room went silent. The only sound was the monitor. Beep, beep, beep. You were skimming, I said, for 5 years. You were draining the company you claimed to love. You let Marcus take the heat. You let him think he was the failure. You watched him panic, watched him borrow money at 18% interest just to cover the holes you dug in the balance sheet. Robert stared at the ceiling. A tear leaked from the corner of his eye, but it wasn't a tear of remorse. It was a tear of self-pity. I deserved it, he whispered. Excuse me? I built it, he snapped, his voice rising. I spent 40 years driving trucks, negotiating with unions, eating garbage food at truck stops. I sacrificed my life for that logistics firm. And for what? So I could retire on a fixed income while Marcus played CEO and bought G-Wagons? So you stole it, I said. You stole $3 million. It was my equity, he argued. I was just taking my payout early. I knew Marcus would ruin it eventually. I was securing my future, my pension. You secured it by destroying your children, I said. You let Serena become a parasite because you didn't want her looking too closely at the books. You let Marcus act the fool because it covered your tracks. And you treated me like a failure because you were terrified I'd figure it out. You were always too quiet, Robert muttered. I knew you were watching. That's why I wanted you out. That's why I pushed for the buyout. To silence the only person who could read a ledger, I concluded. I looked at the man in the bed. I didn't see a father. I saw a liability, a bad asset that needed to be written off. Here's the deal, I said. Deal? He scoffed. I'm your father. You won't send me to jail. It would ruin the family name, the Vance brand. The Vance brand is currently insolvent, I reminded him. And I own the debt. I control the narrative. I pulled a document from the folder. It was a confession of judgment and a transfer of assets. You have $3 million in that Northern Trust account, I said. Stolen money. You are going to wire every cent of it back to Vance Global Logistics by 9 a.m. tomorrow. I can't, he cried. That's my retirement. That's for your mother. Mom doesn't know, does she? I asked. He went pale. She thinks the market did well. She thinks it's investment income. Julian, please, don't tell her. It would kill her. She's stronger than you think, I said. But I won't tell her. Not if you sign. If I sign, I'm broke, he whispered. We lose the penthouse. We lose the status. You already lost the status, I said. Now you're just paying the bill. I held out the pen. Sign the transfer, I said. Repay the company, cover the debt Marcus took out to pay you, and then you retire, for real. And if I don't? Then I walk out to the waiting room, I said, and I show this flowchart to Marcus, and then I call the FBI. You'll spend your retirement in a federal facility for wire fraud and embezzlement, and Mom will be left with nothing but the shame. Robert Vance looked at the pen. He looked at his shaking hands. The monitors beeped, counting down the seconds of his relevance. You're a cold bastard, Julian, he whispered. I'm an actuary, Dad, I said. I calculate risk, and you are a risk I can no longer afford. He took the pen. He signed the transfer order. He signed the confession. I took the papers back and placed them in my briefcase. I locked it. The click of the latch sounded like a gavel. "Goodbye, Dad," I said. "Rest up. You have a busy day of moving tomorrow." "Moving?" "The penthouse is on the market," I said. "I listed it this afternoon. You and Mom are moving to the condo in Skokie. It's paid for. It's modest. It's what you can afford." I turned and walked to the door.
"Julian," he called out.
I stopped, my hand on the handle.
"Did you ever love the company?"
He asked.
"Or was it just numbers to you?"
"I loved the idea of it," I said. "I loved that Grandfather built it to feed his family. I hated that you used it to feed your ego." I opened the door and stepped out. Marcus and my mother were still waiting. They looked up expectantly. "How is he?" my mother asked, clutching her purse. "He's stable," I said. "He's agreed to the restructuring. He's going to retire, Mom, fully." "Oh," she said, looking confused but relieved. "Well, that's probably for the best. He works too hard." Marcus stood up. "Did he say anything about me?" I looked at my brother. The brother who had tormented me for years, who had called me a loser, who had tried to buy me out for 10 grand. I looked at him and realized he was the biggest victim in the room. He had been played by his own father. "He said he was sorry, Marcus," I lied. Marcus blinked, stunned. He did?" "He admitted the debt wasn't your fault," I said. "He took responsibility for the bad strategy. He wants you to take some time off. Find yourself." Marcus slumped back into the chair, tears filling his eyes. It was a mercy. I didn't tell him the truth because it would have destroyed him. Let him hate himself for incompetence. It was better than hating his father for betrayal. "I have to go," I said. "I have a company to run." I walked down the hospital corridor. My phone buzzed. It was an alert from my bank. The wire transfer from Northern Trust had been initiated. $3 million. It wasn't enough to fix the emotional damage, but it was enough to fix the balance sheet. I walked out into the cold Chicago night. The snow had stopped. The air was clear and sharp. I got into my Honda. I looked at the passenger seat where my briefcase sat. Inside was the secret that would stay buried. I had saved the company. I had saved the family from prison. But as I drove away from the hospital, I knew I hadn't saved the family itself. That had died a long time ago. I was just the executor of the estate. January 2020 arrived in Chicago not with a bang, but with the steady, grinding rhythm of commerce. The holidays had passed, a muted affair involving a store-bought ham and a lot of silence, and the city returned to work. At Vance Global Logistics, work looked very different than it had 2 months ago. I sat in the corner office. The ebony desk remained, but the abstract art was gone, sold to a gallery in River North to pay for the new dispatch software. The humidor was gone. The shelves were now lined with binders, Department of Transportation compliance, fuel hedging strategies, quarterly maintenance logs. It was 8:15 a.m. Through the glass wall, I could see the bullpen. It was quiet, but it was a productive quiet. The frantic shouting of Marcus's era had been replaced by the hum of phones and the clicking of keyboards. Serena walked past my office. She was pushing a mail cart. My sister, the former brand ambassador, was wearing a gray sweater from a mid-tier chain store and comfortable sneakers. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail, devoid of the complex extensions she used to sport. She looked tired. She looked bored. But she also looked real. She stopped at the door, holding a stack of invoices. "Signatures," she said, dropping them on my desk. She didn't make eye contact. "Thank you, Serena," I said. "How is the filing going?" "It's filing," she muttered. "It's the alphabet. A comes before B. I think I've mastered it." "Mrs. Higgins says you caught a billing error yesterday," I noted. "A vendor double charging for pallets. You saved us $400. Serena paused. A flicker of something, pride, maybe, or just surprise, crossed her face. "It was obvious," she shrugged. "The invoice didn't match the manifest. Anyone could have seen it." "Marcus wouldn't have," I said. She looked at me then. The resentment was still there, but the raw hatred had dulled into a begrudging respect. She knew I had saved her from homelessness, even if I had made her work for it. "I'm taking my break at 10, she said defensively. "I'm going to Starbucks with my own money." "Enjoy it," I said. She pushed the card away. It wasn't a redemption arc worthy of a movie, but it was a start. She was learning that $1 represented effort, not just entitlement. At noon, I drove out to Skokie. My parents had moved into the condo 3 weeks prior. It was a 2-bedroom unit in a brick complex built in the 80s. It was clean, safe, and utterly indistinguishable from the thousands of other condos in the suburbs. It was the kind of place where retired teachers and civil servants lived. I parked the Honda in the designated spot. There was no valet. There was no doorman. I used my key to open the main vestibule. Inside the unit, the air smelled of lemon pledge and downsizing. My mother, Linda, was sitting on a sofa that looked too large for the room, one of the few pieces they had kept from the penthouse. She was watching a daytime talk show. "Julian," she said, muting the TV. She stood up to hug me. She felt frailer than I remembered. The stress of the move, the shame of the public retirement had taken a toll. "Did you eat? I can make a sandwich. We have ham." "I ate at the office, Mom," I said. "Where's Dad?" "On the balcony," she said, gesturing to the sliding glass door. "He likes the fresh air. He says the view is calming." The view was a parking lot and a strip mall. I walked out. Robert Vance was sitting in a plastic patio chair, wrapped in a heavy blanket. He was staring at a snowplow clearing the lot across the street. "Hello, Dad," I said. He didn't turn. "The plow driver missed a spot," he grunted. "Sloppy." "It happens," I said. I sat in the other plastic chair. The cold bit through my coat, but I didn't button it. "How is the company?" he asked. "Profitable," I said. "We paid off the final installment of the New York loan yesterday. The 18% interest is off the books. We refinanced with Sovereign at prime -1. He nodded slowly. "And the employees? Did they ask about me?" It was a pathetic question. He wanted to know if he was missed. He wanted to know if the cult of personality he had built had survived his disgrace. "They asked if their checks cleared," I said honestly. "And when they did, they stopped asking questions." He flinched. "Right, of course. Mercenaries." "They're workers, Dad," I said. "They trade labor for money. You broke the trade. I fixed it." He finally looked at me. His eyes were dull. The fear of prison had faded, replaced by the crushing boredom of irrelevance. He knew that I held the confession in my safe. He knew that his retirement was a prison sentence in everything but name. He couldn't spend money. He couldn't boast. He couldn't serve on boards. He was just an old man in Skokie who used to be someone. "Does your mother know?" he whispered, glancing at the glass door where Linda was watching us. "No," I said. "She thinks you retired to save the family from Marcus's mistakes. She thinks you're a hero who sacrificed his lifestyle." "Why?" he asked. "Why didn't you tell her I stole the money?" "Because she's my mother," I said. "And she doesn't deserve to know she spent 40 years married to a thief. I did it for her, not for you." He looked away, shame coloring his cheeks. "I transferred the last of it this morning," he said. "The account is empty. I'm living on Social Security." "Good," I said. "That's honest money." I stood up. "I have to get back. We're auditing the fuel contracts for Q1. "Julian," he said. "Yes?" "You were right," he said softly. "About the numbers. They don't lie. I wish I had listened to you 5 years ago." "I know," I said. "Goodbye, Dad." I walked back through the living room. My mother hugged me again. "You're a good son, Julian. Keeping the business going, taking care of everything." "I try, Mom," I said. I drove back to the city. The guilt of the secret weighed on me, but it was a manageable weight. It was the cost of doing business. That evening, I met Marcus at a diner on the outskirts of the city. He had asked to meet. I expected him to ask for money or for his job back. I prepared my refusal on the drive over. When I walked in, he was sitting in a booth, stirring a black coffee. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was wearing jeans and a flannel shirt. He looked younger, stripped of the pretense.
Thanks for coming.
Marcus said. He didn't stand up. What do you need, Marcus? I asked, sitting down. I'm not giving you a loan.
I don't want a loan,
He said. He pushed a piece of pie around his plate.
I'm leaving Chicago.
I raised an eyebrow.
Oh?
Yeah, I got a job in Indianapolis. A friend from college runs a car dealership. He needs a sales manager. It's commission-based. That sounds like a good fit, I said. You were always good at selling a vision.
Yeah, well,
He laughed bitterly. Turns out selling cars requires less
creative accounting.
He looked up at me.
I wanted to ask you something, Julian.
Go ahead. Did Dad really say he was sorry? I paused. I thought about the man on the balcony in Skokie, staring at a parking lot, consumed by his own reduced circumstances. I thought about the confession in my safe. He said he was responsible, I said carefully.
He said the failure wasn't entirely yours.
Marcus nodded, relief washing over him. He needed that lie. He needed to believe that he wasn't solely to blame for the collapse.
Thanks,
Marcus said.
And thanks for not putting me in jail. I know about the tax fraud on the G-Wagons. I know you could have reported me.
The G-Wagons are sold, I said. The debt is paid. The IRS is satisfied. It's over, Marcus. Just don't try to be a CEO again.
I won't,
he said.
I think I'm done with logistics.
He stood up. He put a $10 bill on the table for his coffee. It was the first time I had ever seen him pay for anything with cash.
Good luck, Jules,
he said.
Good luck, Marcus.
He walked out of the diner. I watched him go. He was going to Indianapolis to start over. He would be fine. He would be average. And for a Vance, being average was a heavy punishment, but a survivable one. I finished my coffee and walked out to my Honda. It was dark now. The city lights reflected off the dirty snow. I drove north toward Rogers Park. I didn't drive to a new penthouse. I didn't drive to a mansion. I drove to my studio apartment. I parked on the street. I walked up the 3 flights of stairs. Inside, my monitors were glowing. The server rack hummed, the sound of my real wealth. I sat in my ergonomic chair, the one luxury I allowed myself. I opened the terminal. Account balance, $12,450,000. Vance, Global Logistics, solvent. Family status, stabilized. I had won. I had stripped them of their delusions, forced them to face their own incompetence, and saved them from the consequences of their crimes. I was the broke brother who paid the bills. I was the failure who owned the company. I opened a new browser tab. I searched for municipal bonds, 2020 yield projections. The family drama was over. The numbers were waiting. I smiled, cracked my knuckles, and began to type. I was Mr. Vance, and business was good.